All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello, all. It is a pleasure to greet you. Welcome to this episode. We are very excited to have special guests today. John Rothmann will be here. We will talk about the Clarence Thomas issue, the fact that Thomas wants no part of recusal. I mean, not a surprise, but nonetheless, it's such a stark reflection of the corruption of the high court.
I come from regular stock.
And the other thing that we'll do is we'll talk about corporate polluters and talk about the environment in It's the Planet Stupid. Belinda joins us later today. In fact, the courts are cracking down on corporate greenwashing. You know, when companies say that something is environmental or something is sustainable, and all of a sudden the courts are clapping back on that if it's not true, which is sort of a cool evolution. I feel as though so many things have to happen in the courts in this country, and that's yet another thing that is happening. Kim is here.
Kim, how are you?
And Albert is here also.
Albert, thank you.
Albert, the Dubs got blown out last night. It was not a pretty thing, and might I say that questions linger. I mean, I'd not seen Klay Thompson that cold. That was crazy.
It's a sad ending for potentially his final game with the Warriors. 0 for 10, no points in a blowout loss against the Kings. So
it was.
It's been a tough scene the whole season. So I don't like the play-ins for this reason. We didn't deserve to be in that game, and I didn't want to have a chance and be led on to believe that maybe we could make a run, and we couldn't.
Albert,
so,
thank you.
Did you feel as though they might have a shot at winning the game? They were favored by 3, you know.
Yeah, I think that was just having respect for our last series against them recently, and also we have a lot of good superstars that are a little maybe past their prime. I'm not going to say any names, but we might have mentioned him already, and the other one who likes to get himself out of games with his mouth. So it's been the Steph Curry show this year. Chris Paul was injured for a little bit, and we need to change something for next year. But I'm happy. We've won how many championships? The dynasty might feel like it's over, so
yeah,
let's just enjoy watching Steph while we can.
Well, what an amazing team. And, you know, just even the passing and the way the ball handling historically, we've seen them do that so effectively. I don't think that was particularly on display last night, but as you think about the Warriors, wow, they just really, they set a tone when they were really clicking on all pistons. It was really great.
And now everyone has copied kind of that form, and everybody's shooting a ton of threes. I think Steph Curry has made the biggest impact to basketball probably since Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan made all these scoring and I'll do everything on my own type of players, and then Steph Curry just spawned all these 3-point shooters that also ruined my pickup basketball games. Just everybody's shooting threes now, Mark.
Everybody, the kids are shooting beyond the circle now. I have a question then about, first I have 2 more questions for the commissioner, and then I will move on. My first question is about the Lakers. We do have Southern California viewers and listeners. Lakers move on because Lakers did win, and they'll play Friday night against the Pelicans. Isn't that right?
No, so they just beat the Pelicans. They actually are in the playoffs now. They're going to be scheduled to play the 2nd seed Nuggets.
Oh, excuse me. All right. So I have old information here. So and when
but
does
the Pelicans
that game
do have
start?
another chance to they play the Kings now.
Oh, the Pelicans. It's the Kings that are moving on to play the Kings.
Yeah, the Kings will move on to play the Pelicans to be the 8th seed. But since the Lakers won that game, they are the 7th seed. So
I get it. Okay,
we get LeBron and
that's why
co.
we have the commissioner.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah, I really get it. Now, lastly, I want to ask you about the WNBA, which is enjoying a moment, and maybe the moment that they should have had a while ago. But it's all really about media deals and how many people you put in the seats. You know, it's about who comes out. That's those ticket prices and revenues. They drive salaries on the court. The salaries on the court still aren't very good, but there are more asses in the seats now, right?
Yeah, and they're just riding the wave of Caitlin Clark, the star player from Iowa who made this miraculous run, not even just this season, but she's been pretty dominant throughout her college career. And now that she's the #1 pick in the WNBA and there's a lot of momentum, hopefully more people show up and more people will support the WNBA.
This for the commissioner. Oh, I'm sorry. Was it up there? The Warriors had 2 seasons where they didn't even make the playoffs. Then they won the championship. I don't think the dynasty is dead yet. They should be better next year. Commish, a quick thought?
I watched a good amount of this basketball season, and it feels like the dynasty is dead. But if you think about the 6-year stretch that the Warriors have just had, they had a 15-50 season in there, I think, something like that. They've missed the playoffs twice, and then we won the 1 finals. It's been a roller coaster of a team that was just all based off injuries and the whole dynasty. So I think it's over. I'm also just happy that we have any championships, considering what I went through in my childhood watching the Warriors just not win anything and having Latrell Sprewell choke out our coach. You know, it's been different. So it's a different time now.
Yes, it really is. Well,
Albert,
well
thank you.
done, Albert. And I will leave sports behind for now, but we will check in along the way for sports updates. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I mentioned John Rothmann, bottom of the hour, on all things politics. And this end, of course, make sure to ask John Rothmann to comment on what's happened with Israel and Iran. Please ask him to comment on his thoughts about the future in the Middle East. That's from Brian. Of course, I will. And we'll also talk about SCOTUS, and we'll talk about Trump, and we'll talk about, I may even touch on this mayoral race in San Francisco. You know, we come from San Francisco. This show was a radio show in San Francisco, and we brought it to this platform where you're listening to it or seeing it. YouTube is our home platform now. And we have a mayoral candidate on. Is it Monday? When is it, Kim, that the mayoral candidate joins us?
I have to look.
Didn't mean to wake you, but it would be great if we can get that. Now, Kim, I'll also tell
Kim, how are you?
that I have been in touch with. I was turned on to this by Tim Conway Jr. on KFI. An AI music company. This is like what musicians worry about.
What?
Yeah. They literally will do a song for you. It's all AI. The vocalists are AI. And they do it in less than a minute.
And you just put like keywords in there, right?
You put keywords in, and then you can specify the kind of music you want, or they'll just do it for you. You know,
like you can put like a '70s theme cop.
Right.
Like
I went
music,
for I like funk.
crazy.
Let me see if I can find a one that I did. This is all about the. So I put in the show, Mark Thompson Show. I put in Albert the commish. And I put in Kim, chit, and I put in Tony, Tech Ninja, I think. And I think. It's all AI. Each and every night, it's not right. I mean, and then Albert, you're on the other part of that song, but it's kind of crazy that
the voices sound weird, like chipmunky voices.
Oh, they do? Oh, that's interesting. I thought she sounded kind of very Jodie Watley kind of.
Yeah,
you know.
I agree. Yeah.
What were the? I said the show is powered by the people. That's why you say powered by the people. You know.
Thompson Show. Coming through your stereo, lively flow. Powered by the voice of the streets, you know. News, views, in-depth talk, let's go. Here with the chit-chat, sets the tempo. Tony's eye catching all that's visual.
Thanks, Tony.
That's it. Anyway, that's it. There are a bunch of them there. And I did, the thing is, it's kind of addictive. You start to get into it, and you think, what does a rock song sound like that way? And
On the Mark Thompson Show. Kiss impaled roll duel. Kim's chit sets the tone. Albert leads the Comish known.
Albert, thank you.
Tech wave crash with Tony's might.
Thanks, Tony.
News and thoughts, they spark the fight.
yeah, and then it goes, and you can extend it and work on it, but you can see it's sort of.
Funny.
Hey, that
it's
one was
kinda
pretty
eerie.
cool.
Yeah.
that one feels like Rolling Stones or like
Or like a Metallica almost.
Metallica,
sort of feel.
yeah.
Like
What is this website you found?
it's called Udio, UDIO, like audio, but with no A. And you can go. Yeah, this is a beta site, so they're just kind of testing it out. I think they ask for your reaction and all that kind of thing. So I think you can do way more than I mean, I just got into it a little bit. I just put in our show and I put in you guys and a couple of things, but there are ways to manipulate it and really come up with a song.
Wow.
I write a theme for John Rothmann or something.
Look at us. We've gone AI.
Yeah. Anyway, that's I just as I said, it was just passed on to me, and I had to mess around with it and share it with you a little bit. So it's kind of crazy.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The information you asked for, sir,
Yes.
is that on April 23rd at 11 a.m., San Francisco mayoral candidate Mark Farrell will join us.
Oh, that's great. I'm looking forward to that.
It's a big-time show here,
Yeah, I think so. Well, if he's the only candidate who comes on the show, then he is the only candidate that we will vote for, and that we will. I'm sorry, that's the way we are. You could say, Mark, that's so ridiculous. Why would you just Just because he's the only one to come on your show? That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Now, this is yet another plank in the corrupt house that Clarence Thomas and the Supreme Court has built for itself in Washington, D.C. The notion that, yet again, Clarence Thomas would not recuse himself from a case in which he has direct relationship with the plaintiff. It's incredible to me. And yet, it's not incredible at all. Albert, did you scare up a little something? Here's a little summary of where we are on
A landmark
Thomas
day
and
at the
beyond.
Supreme Court today. It could have huge ramifications for President Trump and hundreds of others. But as the justices get ready to take up a critical case related to the January 6th Capitol riots, the question everyone is asking this morning is, where in the world is Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas? The 75-year-old justice skipped Monday's Supreme Court session, not even participating in oral arguments remotely, as justices sometimes do when they're sick or they can't make it into work. Adding to the intrigue is that Chief Justice John Roberts announced Thomas's absence, but didn't explain why, while noting he would still participate in Monday's cases based on briefs and oral argument transcripts. Our Tom Dempsey is outside the court this morning. Tom, I think a whole lot of people went, wait.
Albert, that's not what I wanted. I wanted something on the, about, I know Thomas wasn't there, but he's back now. And
Boy, is he ever. Would have been nice if he'd stayed away.
Essentially, at the Supreme Court level, the conservative majority is suggesting that they may get rid of this charge that prosecutors have lodged against hundreds of people who took part in the January 6th riot on the U.S. Capitol. And that could do a number of things. One of them is that it will force the Justice Department to reopen some of those cases. Now, they may be pled down or relitigated, but it's pretty remarkable During over 90 minutes of arguments, most justices signaled concern with how the Justice Department is using this law enacted by Congress more than 2 decades ago. It was in response to the Enron scandal.
It was about shredding, right? The original charge, this obstruction charge that they've charged the January 6ers with, has to do with shredding documents insofar as you're obstructing justice, and whether that's applicable to what happened on January 6th.
The idea somehow that you're destroying evidence becomes key. But what attorneys are arguing from justice is that it's not always just about the destruction of evidence. It's about the derailing of a proceeding, which is exactly what the intent was here. And the successful derailing of a proceeding in the case of January 6th, of course, they didn't get a chance. They had to adjourn, essentially, the session that was to certify the election for Joe Biden. They had to do it the next day, right? Or later. I think it was the next day. So, I mean, remember, 20 years is the maximum sentence that one of these J6ers could get. And this is getting down to technical arguments, which we will discuss with David Katz tomorrow, the legal part of it. But why didn't they charge the January 6th insurrectionists with treason, sedition, and insurrection? That's from Phineas. Let me just take a crack at that. You know, treason is one of these words that's been thrown around a lot, particularly in the age of Trump, and certainly in the age of this dug-in politics where people are taking up arms against others. Treason is very hard to define. It really is. I mean, it seems like it's a great word, and, you know, calling someone or something treasonous is something that really cuts through. But if you actually get into a courtroom and have to prove treason, it's very same thing with sedition, which is why although I think treason is more difficult, the sedition charge did stick against a couple of J6ers, those Proud Boys. Remember, they actually got that sedition upgrade. So it's not as though you can't make it stick. It's just very hard. And treason, I'd suggest, and please Google this and tell me, but I'd suggest that treason is one of those things that you haven't seen effectively brought to trial in a long, long time. As I say, great word, but I don't think legally it's an easy shot. It's bizarre. Isn't there a law about obstruction that has to do with physically obstructing? Exactly, Donald asks. I mean, this is a remarkable thing that these people charged the Capitol, entered the Capitol, derailed the proceeding, as I say. I mean, got the proceeding to shut down, threaten lives. And they had a gallows with them. They called for Mike Pence. They said, kill Mike Pence. All these things were happening, and we have it on video, and yet somehow we're in this gray area. And the reason we're in the gray area, sorry?
I was going to say, and they went there, a lot of times legality has to do with intent. And their intent was to do exactly what you said that they did, which is they said, stop the steal, right? Or stop the whatever. So they went there to stop it. They didn't just accidentally stop it. And
so to the Clarence Thomas part of it all. And we can get more into this with both Rothmann, and we'll get more into it with Katz, as I've mentioned, tomorrow. But the Thomas part of it all is that, as Kim says, there was an organized effort to go to Washington that day and an organized effort to storm the Capitol. Because of that, you look at who's behind those efforts. As I just mentioned, Proud Boys have already been rung up on a lot of this stuff. Others have been rung up as well. Clarence Thomas's wife, Virginia Thomas, she is someone who was very much part of the Stop the Steal campaign. She not only was part of it, she underwrote the costs. She underwrote the costs of getting people in buses to that protest. And she also, in communications that have been revealed as a result of text messages, implied that let's get it to the Supreme Court. where the fix is in. Now, that's my, please, she didn't say it that way. I think she said where we've got the, I don't know if she said big guy or we've got, she made some comment as if to say, if we can get it to the courts, if we can put this thing off long enough, then we have the courts on our side. But she said it more crudely than that, although not quite as crudely as I said it. So the way that conservatives like Clarence Thomas are going after this is asking about left-wing protests as well. But Clarence Thomas, make no mistake about it, to be clear about it, Clarence Thomas should recuse himself. I mean, it's just, it's reprehensible in the extreme. Ginny Thomas was knee-deep in Stop the Steal. Vilma is absolutely right.
When you have such a connection and you refuse to recuse yourself, shouldn't there be some type of mechanism where the court can automatically trigger a recusal, or you have to sit this one out?
Sure, there should be. I think there is no kind of mechanism at all at the Supreme Court level to do much of anything, as you're well aware. These people are unfettered and they are unleashed, and they're really they're as close to gods in this country as we come up with in the Constitution. That said, the fear might be, here's the justification for not having that. The fear might be, well, if you do that, you leave it open for the partisanship that might drive various other decision-making processes to literally force recusal on a justice just for political reasons. When you're close to a decision, let's say, on a very close decision, if you can get rid of a justice, you can win that. So you can see how it could be abused, but the kind of abuse that we're seeing right now with Thomas and these conservative justices is pretty scary. These guys are activist justices, but here you have a case in which a justice's wife was actively engaged in trying to overthrow the results of an election. She was actively engaged with January 6 protesters. It is ludicrous to think that this guy could be anything roughly resembling objectivity, and he is. And he's an embarrassment to the court. But it's not just him. But he is the head of this parade because it's all about his wife. So, Clarence Thomas back with the Supreme Court, sitting in on the J6 rioter case, is yet another smear on this country, and it reveals the corruptibility of everything going on when it comes to elections and when it comes to the justice system in America. It's really,
the audacity yesterday of Thomas, who didn't recuse himself and ought to have, questioning at the hearing and downgrading what happened on January 6th. He said, well, has this same charge, this obstruction charge of, the way people get rid of evidence, been applied to other protests that have stopped proceedings, like, referring to city council meetings or other, as if there's any comparison between any other protest that has temporarily stopped a meeting for whatever reason in the United States and what happened on January 6th, which was unprecedented, I think. There is no comparison. It's outrageous that there would even be a thought to compare.
The lawyer for the Justice Department was really good during that part where he pushed back and said, well, have you guys charged anybody else with interfering with proceedings? And the lawyer was strong, and she actually she did cite a couple of instances, although there's nothing on this scale, and that's what she said. She said, frankly, there has never been anything on the scale of January 6th in the history of this country.
Yep.
And so, when Thomas asked, has the government applied this provision to other protests? It does sort of belie his reality, right? Which is that he wants to see his wife and all those J6ers protected. She was at a rally just ahead of the riot, right? Ginny Thomas was at that rally from on the the ellipse, is that, or on the lawn there? That was the rally with former President Donald Trump. And more lawyers are coming forward just saying it's totally inappropriate for Justice Thomas to be asking questions on this case. Totally. His wife is an actor in the January 6th riots. Clarence Thomas must immediately recuse himself from the Supreme Court case, says Democratic Vermont Congressperson Becca Balint. His wife, Jenny Thomas, pushed hard to overturn the results of the 2020 election. We have the receipts. 29 text messages with Mark Meadows. That's what I was talking about before, the text messages. Clarence Thomas's spouse is a J6 co-conspirator participating in a J6 case. Delegitimizes the Supreme Court. Robert Reich says Ginny Thomas was directly involved in efforts to overturn the 2020 election, yet Clarence Thomas didn't recuse himself from arguments today in a case about the January 6th insurrection. How is this not a scandal of epic proportions?
Right.
So, that's the word on Thomas. He is, as I say, not the only problem with the court, but he, on this one, is a remarkably high-profile problem with the court. We'll talk to Rothmann about it more.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash the like button like a boss, everyone. We're on YouTube, and that matters, you know, the thumbs up.
Smash
So
it with your
please, I'd
iron rod.
appreciate it. Thank you very much. Do it for yourself. Do it for your country. Before I get to Kim's news, I want to just get a quick story in that's not related to Thomas or Trump. I thought we'd go to San Francisco for that. So
What?
So San Francisco, I believe we have this video of a shocked couple. They are driving, I think. Are they? Their car was towed
While they were driving
through downtown
Yes.
San Francisco.
What?
Mm-hmm.
We were at a stoplight minding our own business, explains the one tourist. She was running errands, actually, with her husband. While they were stopped along Bush and Montgomery, you're looking at the video now while I'm speaking, they thought the yellow specialty towing truck was moving toward a nearby Waymo autonomous vehicle, but soon it was getting too close for comfort. He came from the side. I thought he was turning right. He started in reverse, and all the lights came on. That's when we were like, hey, something's really wrong here. His lever was coming down, and he pulls back. You can see it. And then they pull back again.
over and over.
I think he was there probably for the Waymo truck, a Waymo vehicle, right? Which was right next to that.
I don't know. It looked like road rage to me.
Oh, is that right?
Because look at the way he screeches off in the end.
Oh.
And she's saying, listen, my registration's paid. I have no tickets. There's no reason for me to be towed. But I think he was mad at them for some reason.
And what is this? Look at this. Wow. Well, here you go. The company, along with two others.
You can see the tow truck.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Albert. You can play the audio. Go ahead. It's
blocks.
okay.
It's definitely really scary. We reached out to Specialty Towing via email and phone, but did not hear back. The company, along with two others, were charged by City Attorney David Chu this past February for fraud and illegally towing parked cars. They're now prohibited from bidding or receiving city contracts. Joanne and her husband tell me they were eventually able to lose the tow truck and drove back home to the East Bay. They maintain they didn't do anything wrong and are still perplexed as to why they were targeted.
Full disclaimer, I definitely paid off my car. There's no, late payments or anything. I paid my registration.
She's planning to file a police report soon and is sharing their story to raise awareness for other drivers.
Be more, careful when they're driving around, as well as, just making sure that if something kicks in or, if something doesn't look right, make sure you do your best to protect yourself.
Wow, that's pretty wild. They fled downtown San Francisco to the safe surroundings of Oakland.
What?
They're from the East Bay. I don't know if they're actually from Oakland. So, all right, Kim's News, and then the great John Rothmann joins Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Well, it's happening. The impeachment trial of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is underway in the Senate. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says there will be a vote to dismiss the impeachment with a simple majority. Schumer accusing Republicans of exploiting the border problem for political gain. Republicans accuse him of hypocrisy, noting that in 2019, the Democratic-led House voted to impeach former President Trump, and the Republican-led Senate held the trial. So, back and forth they go.
Yeah, not at all comparable, but
No,
I
no.
get it. Okay.
Nice try, though. Airplane manufacturer Boeing is being accused of hiding major safety failures. Boeing quality engineer and whistleblower Sam Salifpour testified during a Senate hearing today and warned Boeing's 787 Dreamliner is unsafe to fly due to assembly line flaws.
This
he told
is scary.
lawmakers,
I mean, the Dreamliner is their big offering, and this is pretty titanic news and testimony. Albert, I want to do a Stars from the Sky a little bit later because this is just the beginning. I got a lot of stuff that's involved with the airlines, but go ahead, Kim. Sorry, this is
Salifpour
huge.
told lawmakers today that he raised the issue with leadership for more than 3 years and that he was completely ignored. So for 3 years, as they're building these things, he's saying, hey, we got a problem here. Things aren't right. And they're like, yeah. Go sit down. Do your job.
They are just not the elite organization that they once were. You know, they farmed out a lot of the building of these aircrafts, and so they can't even keep track of where certain things and components are being put together and used.
No, I mean, clearly can't keep track of the bolts. We have a bolt issue.
Can't keep track of the bolts. They don't put
Where's
them
the
on.
bolts?
The reality in that whistleblower report is that they use unsafe parts and discarded parts. They throw them into other aircraft. The whistleblower report from everything I read was so damning and scary. Anyway, so they've his testimony is huge. We'll see what happens because Boeing owns the U.S. government, as you know.
Well, it's happening.
It's part ownership. I understand. It's a shared ownership.
We're learning a little bit more about the 7 people selected so far for the jury in the Trump trial in New York, the criminal trial. The jury foreman is a Harlem salesman, originally from Ireland. Other jurors include an oncology nurse, an IT consultant, a software engineer, a charter school teacher, and there are 2 lawyers sitting on that panel now as well. Court is in recess today. The jury selection process is set to resume tomorrow. So this continues as well.
I'll make this point probably repeatedly, but Donald Trump just has to be hating life right now. Even if he knows that he's going to skate on this at the end, and I don't think he does know that, but even if he were sure of his acquittal, he has to be there every day. No one's kissing his butt. He has to keep his mouth shut. It has to be hell for him.
He can't keep his mouth shut. It's really, really hard for him.
Well, the judge essentially warned us that, hey, curb your dog. Tell your client to, he's
Muzzle.
not allowed to do this.
Put a leash on your creature there. Yeah. We'll talk about Columbia University now because Congress is right now grilling the president of Columbia University over anti-Semitism on campus. In a hearing today, New York Republican Elise Stefanik said Columbia is not taking enough action against faculty members who spew anti-Israel rhetoric. Columbia President Minouche Shafik said, although initially unprepared, that the university has taken multiple steps following the swarm of protests in response to the October 7th attack on Israel.
This is a really tough spot because you can legitimately criticize Israel, and the problem is that oftentimes legitimate, and I'll put it in quotes, criticism of Israel is really a smokescreen for anti-Semitism. So they're not wrong in being concerned about this. That's the scary and bizarre thing about Israel and Israeli policy. So it leaves the university in a very tough spot on the one hand, but you do have to crack down on some of this stuff because some of it is blatantly anti-Semitic.
Yeah. Lastly, because I know we need to get to Mr. Rothman, I will say that the senior NPR editor who exposed alleged rampant liberal bias has resigned. 25-year NPR vet Uri Berliner was suspended after suggesting an open-minded spirit no longer exists and NPR has lost the trust of America. He claimed the outlet didn't investigate whether allegations that former President Trump colluded with Russia were correct. The COVID-19 lab leak theory and Hunter Biden's laptop story were also stories he pointed to. So again,
ever since Click and Clack have been gone, the Tappet brothers, NPR just isn't. Am I right, people? Those crazy libs at NPR, it was Click and Clack. They were the only ones keeping them centered.
Well, he's gone. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is a huge selection that you will find at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Amazing coffees and teas. Really quite the treat. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Get your exclusive 10% discount just for being a very valued member of the Mark Thompson Show crew. You can type in Mark T, no spaces, Mark T at checkout and get your 10% off and enjoy the good stuff. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our Patreon, our PayPal supporters. We are crowdfunded, and we recognize you at the end of every show. We scroll everybody's name who is either contributing through PayPal or through Patreon. And yesterday, we had some people step up with super stickers and super chats, and that's another great way to help us. So honestly, we're here for... were it not for you, we wouldn't be here. That might be a way to put it. Speaking of NPR, we've kind of on the NPR model here, which is, if you can support us, we can stay on. So it's very cool that everybody's here. And if you can find it in your heart, it is a terrific way to be part of our community, to support the show through Patreon or PayPal. There are links to both, hot links under, I think, all our videos. Right, Albert? All of them have it. And certainly there's a link under this video as well. And of course,
all videos and live streams have the link in there.
Well, cool. Very good. All right. Without any further delay, although...
The Mark Thompson Show.
I do love delaying, but without any further delay, how about that sexy beast, John Rothmann on politics? He, the host of Around the Political World with John Rothmann. Hello, sir. Thank you for being with us. There's a lot going on. I will ask you to weigh in first on what's happening at the Supreme Court. I was touching on the Clarence Thomas lack of recusal.
I was listening. I listened to your show.
The obvious nature of a conflict here.
Of course, there's a conflict, but understand that Supreme Court justices can only recuse themselves. That is to say, there is no code or ethical standard. So unless a Supreme Court justice, and we have one classic example, and that was William Rehnquist in the United States versus Richard Nixon, who knew all the people in the Justice Department and said, I am recusing myself on the question of the tapes because these are all people I've worked with and that I know. Clarence Thomas has chosen a different path, and there is nothing that can be done to discipline him. He absolutely has that right. That is the right of every Supreme Court justice to determine whether to recuse themselves or not.
I have to deal with something quickly, John. Excuse me. Pardon me for this. Albert, could you please respond to this? Mo is saying, your volume level to the output mix is very low, Mark. The total solution audio output is fine with Albert being very blasty. So you're hot, Albert. I'm low, but the overall volume is fine. Can we address this in some way, Albert? Because
I'll adjust my mic level right now.
I'm going to adjust.
If I can quote, please, the Three Bears. As long as I'm just right, that's all.
Yes, I think Rothman is fine.
I've been writing Rothman's level. I can't hear myself in playback, but I adjusted yours as well.
Okay, and I turned myself up a little bit. I'm hoping that we'll check in with listeners and hope that this addresses in part that question. Now, back to the fact that you just shared with us, which is that essentially there is nothing that forces a member of the Supreme Court a justice, there is nothing that forces a justice to recuse him or herself.
Exactly. That is precisely
and
correct.
there's no guardrail on that. So, this is outrageous, though, is it not?
Well, look, it's very clear that Clarence Thomas has a conflict of interest. His wife, Ginny, has been deeply involved, as you rightly pointed out, in the January 6th insurrection. So, of course, there's a conflict, and there is still no requirement, even if it's self-evident, there is no rule that requires recusal. And by the way, a Supreme Court justice can sit as long as they choose to, unless they're dead or resign. You can even sit in ill health. I'd remind you, William O. Douglas had several strokes and remained on the court, even though his health was clearly impaired. So there is no discipline or rule for that branch of government.
Is there any incentive for Congress to change that, John?
It's a very interesting question. I don't know that Congress can regulate another branch of government any more than another branch of government can regulate any other branch. I think we need to understand the issues here. It's not just Thomas, it's Sam Alito, who clearly has his proclivities as well. But the argument could have been made and was made against Earl Warren and members of the liberal so-called Warren Court that they had already made up their minds. But that's the way the Supreme Court is structured. And by and large, it has worked through the centuries.
No, the Supreme Court, you just made me think of it, is, as you know, undercutting the power. They'll do it based on jurisdictional decision making. That is to say, they're going to decide that you don't have the jurisdiction, the EPA, to control various toxic toxic chemicals. And the same is true of consumer protections. They're going to rule that there's not sufficient standing.
That is the power of the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
and that's why, if I may be so bold, who is president matters. Remember that Donald Trump, prior to his election as president, announced that he was going to nominate justices for the court who would rescind Roe v. Wade. And he did. And the American people made a choice. Now, they may know that choice was incorrect, and I think that will be a central issue in the campaign of 2024.
Well, most certainly. I mean, you're seeing now states beginning to put these draconian anti-abortion and anti-women's choice, anti-choice, however you want to say it. These draconian laws are in place, and it's a remarkable thing that this country is seeing itself rolled back in terms of laws by, what might be 100 years.
Let me just point out, that's your political position and my political position. Others would say that the law passed in Arizona in 1864, when Abraham Lincoln was president and running for re-election against General McClellan, that law dealing with an absolute ban on abortion, except to save the life of the mother, it should be the law of the land. And I would remind you that that was the position of many key Republicans, including Kerry Lake, in the state of Arizona. And I would remind you now that although there are some calls to rescind that law, that the Republicans are having a hard time getting the votes to do it. So these are all factors in the way we work. That is part of the success and failure of our American political system.
It's interesting because you talk about the effect, and there it is, abortion policy to influence election. I was running through the poll results yesterday of a New York Times Siena poll, and someone was commenting in the comments that I like polls too much. But this is a poll about what things are priorities. It's not a poll about how you're going to vote. And they had a pretty solid sample size. As I recall, it was around 1,200. Might have been, and their original sample size was much bigger. It was over 100,000 to get to these people who they wanted. And it was done on cell phones. But anyway, the abortion issue, which I thought would rank quite high, the ability of women to control their own body, actually didn't even make the top three.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it, Mark. Not for a millisecond. You understand that there have been 7 states that have voted on this issue, and in each state, which are theoretically states that would want a tighter abortion restriction, it was voted down. The same thing will happen in Arizona, I can assure you. And I can even see in a state like Alabama, where there is now a revolutionary response to it. So these issues also are highlighted by the momentary headline. And I think we're going to see that. But by the way, I don't know if you saw the Biden commercial. Maybe we can pull it up and show it about a young woman who nearly lost her life because of the rescission of Roe v. Wade. I must tell you, I love political ads. There's something called the Living Room Candidate, which takes us back to 1952. You can watch a whole panoply of ads. But this ad produced by the Biden campaign is one of the most effective, powerful, compelling ads that I've seen. And basically it says, if you put Trump back in the White House, you'll see even tighter restrictions. And but the woman who gave the testimony is the woman who nearly died because of the rescission of Roe v. Wade.
I saw the ad. It is very powerful indeed. Let me get you to the Middle East, sir.
Wait. Before you do that, can we talk about the fact that at this very moment in the United States Senate, there is a trial taking place.
The Mayorkas trial?
And this is a critical moment because the Republicans, and I want everybody to understand this, this could have been avoided had the Republicans voted for the bill which was proposed by a bipartisan group of senators. Mayorkas' response is, I'm not responsible for what happens on the border. I'm the secretary, but I'm not responsible. And the Republicans are trying to use this as a political club, if you will, in the election. The impeachment of Mayorkas is absurd. It's the first time in more than 100 years that a cabinet officer has been formally impeached by the House of Representatives. And the Republicans, and I listened particularly to Senator Lee and Senator Cruz, demanding a full trial. And they're making the presentations. I'm with you now, but if I weren't, I'd be listening. I think they're the ones who are making the argument now on the floor of the Senate. This is a complete misuse of impeachment. Did you see this morning senators being required now to sign in and take a separate oath on impeachment, which is the standard process? So I'm only pointing out, you have Mayorkas up there. That's great. You can disagree with the policies on the border of Joe Biden, but to impeach Mayorkas for what? He's the secretary, for God's sake. He's not the chief enforcer. If you want to go after somebody on this, they ought to go after Joe Biden. And by the way, please note the impeachment thrust against Joe Biden has fallen flat. Even Republicans understand the absurdity of it. So this is part of the political process that should and is profoundly disturbing to all of us.
Schumer posted, let's not kid ourselves about what's going on today. The impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas has nothing to do with high crimes and misdemeanors and everything to do with helping Donald Trump on the campaign trail. It's beneath the dignity of the Senate to entertain this nakedly partisan exercise. Impeachment should never be used to settle policy disagreements. That would set a disastrous precedent for the Congress and could throw our system of checks and balances into endless cycles of chaos. But of course, to whatever degree there is chaos and to whatever degree there are problems for the Biden administration, it serves their master. That's Donald Trump. And in fact, this was really brought with the urging of Donald Trump, just as, and this is the ridiculous thing and the irony of this, as the Republicans voted down those things that would have been likely one of the most revolutionary, transformative border bills that had ever passed Congress. You would have seen many more in the way of immigration judges. You would have seen much more money
100%.
flowing to the border. So these are and again, and the reason that was voted down was at the behest of Donald Trump.
Exactly.
It was for political reasons.
And the Democrats need to make this a major issue. The other great issue domestically that we're going to deal with is the vote in the House of Representatives on removing Speaker Johnson from the chair. If he is saved, it will only be because of Democrats who will stand with him. And the fact of the matter is, the Republicans have proven brilliantly their inability to be a responsible political party in control of the House of Representatives. Speaker Johnson is going to bring up the Ukraine aid bill, the Israel aid bill, the bill for Taiwan, and some border aspects, all as separate pieces of legislation, because that is what the Freedom Caucus is insisting on. And all I can tell you is this is one of the most disgraceful moments in the history of the House of Representatives. And may I be clear, if the Democrats had pulled this, I would feel just as passionately. This is not a partisan issue. The job of the Speaker of the House is to run the House of Representatives in an able fashion. And I'll give Johnson credit on this. He has tried to do that, even though I disagree with him on everything. But the question becomes now whether Marjorie Taylor Greens and the others in the Freedom Caucus will be able to dislodge him as Speaker of the House. By the way, Johnson said he will not resign. So if they're going to get rid of him, they're going to have a vote.
And as you say, the Democrats may save him. What a bizarre time we live in. Now to the Middle East.
Yes.
Israel faces. Well, first of all, I want to ask you something because I made sort of what I thought was a kind of bold statement the other day, as there's a lot of hand-wringing over, and I understand why there's hand-wringing over what Israel is going to do. And over this attack from Iran that was provoked by the attack on the embassy in Syria. And I suggested, and I want to know whether you agree with this, that the kind of attack from Iran that was produced, I don't want to soft sell it completely, but you've given Israel hours and hours to prepare. There were intercepts of these various missiles and drones from not only Israel, but the U.S., Jordan, et cetera. And there was plenty of time, essentially, to dodge what I thought felt to me as though it was a performative, obligatory for the Iranian street attack on Israel. So I'm wondering if you, A, agree with that, and B, if that's true, you can tell me why Israel would make another move now. I mean, isn't that just an escalation for Israel to make another move?
Let's remember that over 300 missiles and drones were fired at Israel. I've had the opportunity this morning to see by video some of the missiles. If any one of them had hit, it would have been an unmitigated disaster for the Israelis. I had friends in Israel. I have friends in Israel who sent me the images of their being held in their safe rooms, whole groups of people. The whole schedule of education in Israel was canceled because of fear that what the implications would be of these bombings. We are lucky that the United States, Great Britain, France, Jordan, and yes, even Saudi Arabia decided that Iran represented a major threat. Will the Israelis respond? You bet they will. Can you imagine if 300 rockets, missiles, drones were fired at Washington, D.C., even if you took down every single one of them, there would still be an action. Now, the Israelis are trying to act responsibly, but you understand, the goal of Iran, and they've made it clear in all their statements, is the total destruction of Israel, period. And so the Israelis understand what an existential threat is. What is interesting to me is the nuclear program in Iran, which continues to progress. I was frankly worried that they might use a modified nuclear weapon in such an attack. Thank God they didn't. But you understand that if one Hiroshima or Nagasaki type bomb hit Tel Aviv, half of the population of Israel would be destroyed. The Israelis are certainly going to respond, and the world certainly has to understand if any nation were attacked as Israel was attacked, they would have the right to respond. The problem in Israel is how do you calibrate it? Because the last thing the Israelis want is a regional war. But what was interesting to me, most significant of all, is that President Biden stood solidly with Israel, said he had Israel's back, and the United States remains firmly committed to the survival and the territorial integrity of the nation of Israel. And that is a critical statement by this president in an election year.
Mark, you're wrong. The ICBMs from Iran got there within 10 minutes.
That's correct. The ICBMs were within 10 minutes. And although, let me be clear, Mark, of course Israel had time to prepare. They had to have time to prepare. And the United States had to have time to prepare. But the existential threat to the existence of Israel is clear. And imagine, Mark, if Israel did not have the air defense system that it has. Imagine if the United States had not stepped up, if Great Britain and France and Jordan and Saudi Arabia had not stepped up, why the Israelis would have been in a disastrous situation, and you would have seen an even broader escalation. But everybody
I want to explore this with you, though, because sure. I am saying, and I want you to set me straight or whatever, I'm saying that this seemed to be choreographed by Iran so that they could fire for the first time inside Israel. So that sends an immense message. But there were hours before any missiles were launched. So this idea that it took 10 minutes, they hit them when maybe the ICBM was launched and it took 10 minutes to get there, but they had hours before they launched it. I mean, Israel
is on permanent alert. Do you understand? They didn't need 10 minutes. They're on permanent alert.
That's just not. I mean, I get the spirit with which we make that point, but you know what there's permanent alert and vigilance, and then there's real alert where people are in their bomb shelters, and it's the latter that was going on that night in Israel. So what I'm saying is that was because they had warning from Iran. They knew that this was going to happen, didn't they?
Yes, of course they knew, and we know that Israel in some way is going to have to respond. What is the real danger in all of this is, what if the air defense hadn't worked? What if the United States, Britain, France, and the others had not participated? How could Israel have fended off 300 separate attacks, including ICBMs, including drones, and who knows what kind of weapons Iran might have used? I'm not hysterical, I'm just logical. I'm very clear about this. The intent of Iran is to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. The danger that Israel faces is that if ever Iran had that capability and felt confident of that capability, they might do it. Now, there is a check on this, and the check is that the Iranians know that Israel also has the ability to respond mightily. And I think that the mullahs are more interested in their own survival than they are in destroying Israel. So to that degree, we just need to understand, thank God the United States and Israel and Great Britain and France and Jordan. By the way, you do know that Iran is now threatening Jordan. They're threatening to destabilize the king.
Well, this is the other thing I wanted to get to, and I will get to you this question. I want to just say, Phineas, Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis are still at war with Israel. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Phineas, because the reality is if Iran really wanted to strike within Israel suddenly and without warning, they could have gotten Hezbollah to do it. I mean, they have proxies in the region and powerful proxies in the region so that they could have done real damage inside Israel if they wanted to.
And they still could.
And they still could. Now, I want to talk about Iran quickly and their relationship. I was making the point the other day. I mean, they don't even speak Arabic in Iran. They speak Farsi. I mean, it's not an Arab country per se, and because
it's a Muslim country.
It's a Muslim country.
Muslim coalition.
And as a Shiite Muslim country, tell me how they fit in the puzzle pieces of the Middle East, and why, as you suggest, that there are alliances there that just won't happen.
The Sunnis, and those are our allies. That's Jordan, that's Saudi Arabia, that's Egypt. Those are the so-called moderate Arab countries, are deathly afraid of Iran because Iran would like to destroy them as well. So there is an old expression, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And that is the prevailing view now between Sunni and Shia. Most Americans are not sophisticated enough politically in the Middle East to understand that differential. But it's important to understand it. It doesn't obviate the fact that there is a consensus in the Muslim community, Shiite and Sunni, that ideally they'd like Israel to vanish. But one of the reasons that Hamas did what it did when it did it was to prevent Saudi Arabia from entering into a de facto relationship with the Israelis. However, you will note in this crisis that Saudi Arabia granted Israel even the need and the right to use their airspace to defend themselves. So the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
That's the coin of the realm in the Middle East. Hey, you know what's happening at USC? They just canceled this valedictory speech.
They sure did.
Yeah.
Now, the reason is not because she doesn't have free speech.
Let me just tell everybody what happened.
In social media,
go ahead.
She 5 years ago made a post condemning Zionism and challenging the right of Israel to exist as a nation. And so it wasn't a question of her free speech. It's the same question, by the way. There's a hearing in Congress taking place even as we speak on this question of the rising Jew hatred. Now, let me be clear. People have a right to criticize Israel. People have a right to criticize Zionism. They have a right to express freely what they want to say. What USC is saying is she has the right to express it, but not in a valedictory speech. where she has to address the needs of all students. That, by the way, is completely consistent with the policy of not only USC, but many major American universities. But understand that we have had 3 university presidents who have had to resign, high-profile cases, including Harvard University, because they wouldn't condemn hatred of Jews. So this is something that has to be clear. I believe she had a right to free speech. Did she have a right to deliver a speech at a graduation as the valedictorian of her class, which would have called into question the right of Israel to exist? That's what USC is saying she did not have the right to do. It's an interesting question. I frankly have never been afraid of anybody saying anything, and I would love to see what her speech would have been. But I can tell you that what USC is doing is what universities across this country are having to do. This morning, the president of Columbia University was asked point blank whether or not she felt that Jew hatred should be condemned. And you want to know the tragedy? She equivocated. And
that's what they do. I mean, it's remarkable that they do. But I don't know how the question. It's all how the question's asked.
Yeah, if somebody got up and condemned African Americans, why there wouldn't be a question about their being removed from the giving the major graduation speech. There is a certain sense of solemnity and responsibility, and this is the question which we all have to confront. Had her postings not been so hate-filled, why there probably wouldn't have been a question. But she would not guarantee that she would not say those words at graduation. And so USC said, we're not taking away your diploma nor your right to freedom of speech. You're just not going to be the valedictorian.
No, she's a super smart, adorable. Look at her gorgeousness.
I want you to understand. I don't care what a person looks like at any given moment.
No,
All I care about is the content of what they say.
Of course. I was just making the point. Biomedical engineering, and she has a minor in resistance to genocide. I didn't even know that was a minor.
Yes.
I mean,
all kinds of things at USC.
What?
And let me again point out what we need to define genocide. Just take a look at a classic dictionary definition of genocide. If Israel were committing genocide, there wouldn't be a Palestinian standing. And they have the power to have eliminated the whole population. They could have done it. Israel is not a genocidal state, nor does it practice apartheid. And the fact that these terms are hurled around and frankly abused, it's very disturbing to me.
Why comment on her looks, Mark? I was just saying that she looked because it was a picture of her. That's why. Maybe I shouldn't have.
No, you're clearly a sexist, but it's okay, Mark.
Yeah,
we love you
sexist,
anyway.
Exactly. I've oftentimes said he's handsome. Look at that guy's handsome.
But you know how careful we have to be
absolutely not
now?
something. Jeez, I mean,
All of us have to be careful about our form of expression.
I don't want to say anything for the rest of the show, John. Just talk, and I'm going to just sit here.
No. And that was the point at USC. The point
John, the man Rothman from Robert Prado. Come on. Look at you getting the love. That's really great.
I only have the love because people support the Mark Thompson program, which I urge you to do.
Thank you so much, John. We love having you in, and you're just, one of our families. So I appreciate you so much being here today. You can find John's podcast. It's just a 10-minute offering. You get all you need in a quick visit every day with Around the Political World with John Rothmann.
And may I put in a plug, please? We have a new podcast. I speak for up to 5 minutes, 10 minutes every day on the Voice of San Francisco. And if you Google the Voice of San Francisco, by the way, your guest, Mark Farrell, the former mayor of San Francisco and now a contender, is a part of this process, and he will also be appearing on the Voice of San Francisco. So it's in small letters, the Voice of San Francisco. And there's a podcast label on the top. Just click it on. Every day I comment on something in San Francisco. But let me tell you that the most important single thing is that you support the Mark Thompson program, because that's how we keep this thing afloat. And Mark, you have my full support. I don't care if you're a sexist or not.
What?
Hey, Mark, can I ask you quickly, how's your father doing?
He's not in the best of shape. But I appreciate you asking about him. And what can I say? These are, it's a long time to live. And when you live a long time.
Just give your parents my warmest good wishes and tell them they are in my prayers.
Thank you so much, sir. Great to have you here. John Rothmann, everyone. Joins us every Wednesday. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Love my Rothman. Karen says that she still loves me. That's important. I need the love. Quit picking on Mark. Exactly. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, it's weird that you're getting picked on. It's usually Brett or probably me. And
Yeah.
Brett's not even here yet anymore. And now Kim.
I'm a big fan of Rothman. It's good to get him on. I appreciate that, Albert. Thank you for your help. And I don't know what the audio levels are like now. I'm very concerned about that. We have different.
I've been
sources.
kind of listening back on my phone. So.
Are you? That's a good way to check it out. Thank you. If you can plug into your phone with headphones, that's a really true kind of way to determine whether or not the levels are right. Hey, I have stories from the sky, and I'd love to do it. As I say, there's a lot going on, and I wonder if I could rally it. Then Kim's News, then Belinda. That's the way I see the show for the rest of this hour going. Smash the like button if you would. If you're here and just passing through, throw us a thumbs up.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it like a boss. Come on now. I'm working hard. I had these, I don't even, Albert, do you know this? They sliced my mouth open. They sewed it all up, and then the stitches came out, and they had to go back. They have to numb you all up again, and they.
Oh my gosh! What kind of
drugs
did they give you, Mark?
all up again.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Did they give you? Do you have any fun drugs at home, though, Mark?
It was.
Oh my God!
No, it's funny you should ask that though, because I asked her, the surgeon. I said, "Look, I'm not a pills guy, but please don't let me, suffer in pain." She said, "No, just take Motrin. You'll be fine. Motrin, ibuprofen." So I've been taking ibuprofen, and it has been pretty good. But I did commit because I can't do anything. You can't exercise. You can't do it. You can't bend over because they're worried about the stitches pop. You can't eat. You can't chew. You can only have. This prepares me for a little bit later in life. Where you can only have soft food, like literally I'm having just mashed potatoes with my medicine. It's like absolutely just take me to Florida and,
you're ready
give me
for the villages,
mashed potatoes
Mark.
and my
Can
medicine.
I get you some more mashies, Grandpa?
Yeah. So.
The villages lifestyle. That's their.
I'm right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Drop off the Viagra and mashed potatoes. That's what. That's life at the villages. And yes, Albert, also, I'll tell you this. Kim knows this because she was here, but the doctor called me, and my heart there are issues with my heart as well, which is really incredible because
Oh my God.
I know, because I see myself as being all heart. You know what I mean? Like the one thing that is not a problem is my heart. But apparently they want me on heart medicine too. So they want me on two. I go from no medicines for years to like jumping on the pharma train, man. And it's just.
Oh my God.
I know it's not fun.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad everything's hopefully all right now. And
well, we'll see.
You
I mean,
leave your heart out in the field. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be the result of medical science before you know it. This, Albert, is an opportunity for us to do it. Let's do it. We like to keep an eye on what's happening with those things associated with aviation and the air. This is Stories from the Sky.
We have clearance, Clarence.
Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Enough is enough! I have had it with these monkey-fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane! Everybody strap in!
It's chaos as the FAA has grounded all Alaska airline flights because of a problem with weight calculation systems. Then the FAA steps in and lifts that grounding an hour later. It was a huge issue. Apparently, there is a system that calculates weight and balance, and the FAA ordered a ground stop for all Alaska and Horizon flights because it wasn't operating properly. It happened this morning. All Alaska mainline and subcarrier flights stopped. They did not provide a reason for the advisory initially, but Alaska Airlines reported encountering a problem while updating software. This is their statement. This morning we experienced an issue while performing an upgrade to the system that calculates our weight and balance. And after they got that squared away, they were back in the sky. Flights for SkyWest, which provides regional service for Alaska Airlines, they were excluded from the ground stop. But they're anticipating all kinds of residual delays because you know how that happens. You know, somebody sneezes on Alaska Airlines in Anchorage and it's a delay in, Phoenix.
Yeah, because those aircrafts are like in and out of every location. It goes from one place to another, and it's just a trickle effect. And then they get rebooked to other carriers, and other carriers are involved. So it's just like a whole bunch of dominoes that fall when these things happen.
That's exactly it.
Albert, thank you.
And the reality is that it happened while people were on the tarmac waiting to take off. Imagine that. This is an FAA edict. You can't take off. Then you've got a taxi off the tarmac and back to the gate. One person wrote, I've been sitting in this airplane for 2 hours. It was supposed to be a 3-hour flight. We were supposed to leave at 8:30 this morning. We are still sitting on our plane. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. So that's pretty huge. Earlier this year, I'll remind you, the airline was forced to cancel thousands of flights after a door plug popped on that 737 MAX 9.
That was United, right? Was that United or Alaska?
That was Alaska.
That was Alaska.
That was Alaska. How dare you, Kim?
Yeah, Kim.
Kim, how are you?
I love United.
My bad. I'm sorry, United.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, right. You misspoke, would you say?
I
Yes,
misspoke.
Right. Well, I don't. They, of course, did, following a thorough inspection, get cleared to resume flying. So Boeing shelled out $160 million earlier this month to make up for losses that Alaska Airlines had as a result of that problem. So, they got their money back. They clawed it back from Boeing, who makes the aircraft. But this is all going on while, as we'd mentioned earlier, Boeing whistleblowers are stepping up, and they are speaking, at least one of them, before Congress. A Boeing whistleblower told a congressional hearing that he got threats against his life. Another said that a probe into the door of the Alaska Airlines flight that blew out was a criminal cover-up. Both of them giving evidence to a hearing today around Boeing, this beleaguered company, which has moved to the front of many travelers' anxieties when it comes to safety concerns. This guy who spoke today before the Congressional Committee works as a quality engineer for Boeing and claimed that sections of the 787 Dreamliner jets have not been properly secured. The other whistleblower, executive director of the Foundation for Aviation Safety, former Boeing manager, had warned of chaotic manufacturing at the company.
That's scary.
They said that the safety situation at Boeing was like the company playing Russian roulette with people's lives.
God.
We never know exactly when it's going to happen or where or how it's going to happen.
Well, that inspires confidence in the airline industry.
Yeah.
I mean,
said that
the great majority
the investigation into that 737 MAX that had its door blown out mid-flight was being covered up. So he says there are revelations there that we just don't know because there is a cover-up ongoing. What's that, Kim?
I was just thinking, aren't the majority of aircraft in the United States manufactured by Boeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's Boeing or Airbus. That's the whole thing. And Boeing is the American company. And Boeing was, let's face it, was a top-drawer company for years. But it would appear that they've really seen degrading of the kind of stuff that they produce. And no records or documenting of the work associated with the removal of the Alaska Airlines door was made available. And again, I'll remind you, Boeing said we just can't find anything. Do you remember this on the Alaska Airlines thing? The door popped out. Boeing was looking into it, and they looked for records that documented the work.
If they couldn't even find that.
That's my point.
Yeah.
And he's saying, no, it's there. In my opinion, he wrote,
He's
I
saying
believe
they're
he
covering it up.
stated this. In my opinion, this is a criminal cover-up. Records do exist documenting the detail and the hectic work done on the Alaska Airlines airplane, and Boeing's corporate leaders know it too. They fought to withhold these same damning records after the 2 MAX crashes. I know this Alaska Airlines documentation exists because I personally passed it to the FBI.
Whoa.
That's from the whistleblower. He told the hearing, I have even been subjected to threats of violence from my supervisor after I attempted to discuss the problems in a meeting in April 9th, 2023 meeting. After the meeting, my supervisor said to me, I would have killed anyone who said what you said if it was from some other group. I would tear them apart. I mean, this is a scary place. The culture at Boeing is not to get to the truth. The culture at Boeing is to cover it up and full speed ahead. He also has said, Boeing officials attempted to intimidate and retaliate against me by sidelining me from my job duties and excluding me from key meetings. There were threats being made against him. There was a large nail put through his car tire. You know, to be a whistleblower is a gutsy thing to begin with. The public's safety is at stake here. These guys both stepped forward, and it looks like they've taken a lot of heat for doing it.
Well, they had the one whistleblower against Boeing who gave testimony to federal regulators, and then 2 days later he was dead. And the coroner said self-inflicted, but there are questions.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's alarming. It's scary. Anyway, there's been retaliation against these whistleblowers, and it continues to be alarming, both the retaliation, but also to the point, their testimony has got to scare all of us, anyone who's getting on a Boeing plane. That's Stories from the Sky.
This has been Stories from the Sky. The captain has turned off the seatbelt sign, and you are now free to move about the cabin.
I think it's a fair point. Cassandra says, correction mark, this is the culture of the American corporation. I mean, you know, we talk about how there is essentially regulatory ownership on the part of these companies. We call it regulatory creep, when a company slowly gets so big that they essentially take over the very regulatory agencies that they're supposed to be responding to. That's what happens with the FAA. You see it with the banking community as well. And you see it in different aspects of government. But Cassandra's right. I mean, it's the culture of the American corporation that creates that regulatory creep. I guess what I'm surprised by, Cassandra, is the way in which there can actually be physical threats, and as Kim noted, I mean, maybe murder associated with taking out these whistleblowers. It's incredible. Yeah, like Julie says it, mafia style.
Yeah.
I'm just not... Speaking of mafia style, I know I have to go to Kim in a moment.
This is worth it.
This is the story that I have waited to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make sure I have it here. And where is it, Kim? Lord. I was so excited when I saw this story. I almost wanted to, here it is, I found it. I almost wanted to go right on the air at that moment to share it with you. If you're a regular listener to this show, you will appreciate this story. Albert, can you rally me some law and disorder? I have a single story in Law and Disorder that will be of interest to regular viewers and listeners. This is Law and Disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law, you're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
Salvatore Rubino, 61 years old, also known as Sal the Shoemaker, everybody.
Joe Fish, Sal the Shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
It's just Sal the Shoemaker, doing more than fixing heels. That's right. his Long Island cobbler shop, which you can see there. Albert has it on screen.
Joe Fish, Sal the shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
He pleaded guilty to his involvement with a New York mafia gambling ring. They used his repair shop as a front for illegal activities going on in the back.
What was he doing back there, Mark?
I think he was probably taking gambling operations to another level.
My bad.
He admitted
I'm
in
sorry.
court he was running card games, but also operating illegal gambling machines inside his former shoe repair business.
Oh, Sal.
And there's no business like shoe business. Prosecutors say the ring operated out of the innocence of this front-end business. A gelato shop, soccer club, a social club. 4 co-defendants of the Genovese family pleaded guilty earlier this month.
Joe Fish, Sal the shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
To various felony charges stemming from their long-running operation of several lucrative gambling operations. You can see him there. Everybody who wanted to get a look at Sal the shoemaker, you can get it now. Sal's shoe repair. It looks so innocent. It looks so harmless. It looks so decent. And behind the shoe repair was the sinning, the illegal activity, the gambling, and the gaming.
Oh, my God.
Yes. Joseph Macario, 69, also known as Joe Fish, everybody.
Right.
He also pleaded guilty to
Joe Fish, Sal the shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
And Joseph Ratigliano, 65, also known as Joe Box.
Joe Fish, Sal the shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
Yeah. And Mark Fuhrer, 61. No nickname given.
No. Boring.
They all pleaded guilty to felony charges related to operating various illegal gambling businesses. What happens, apparently, is Ratigliano and Rubino would collect the proceeds on behalf of the Genovese crime family and distribute them up to higher-ranking members, including Polito and Macario. Sal's shoe repair did close in 2021 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We've shared with you, Albert did, pictures of the fine establishment that was really a front for illegal gambling.
I was worried about how the people of New Jersey would get their shoes, or I'm not sure where they're from. I forgot. But
I think it's Long Island.
Long Island, on Long Island. I don't know how they're going to get the shoes repaired now.
That's true. That's a good point. I mean, they can
a couple
certainly
years.
find another place to gamble.
Yeah.
But the shoe repair is going to be hard to come by.
I'm surprised the pandemic got in the way of that, because people still gamble to gather to gamble. So
yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what happened. They had, I think, slot machines there too, is what I'm seeing.
Oh, yeah.
They brought in more than $2,000 a day just in slot play. And bets were placed online. There's a big online part of this, and so that's sports gambling and that sort of thing. With their guilty pleas, these 5 members and associates of the Genovese crime family have admitted they committed crimes to benefit a criminal enterprise notorious for inflicting harm on our communities for generations, said the United States attorney. As long as the mafia doesn't get it, that illegal gambling is a losing proposition, they can bet on this office and our partners vigorously enforcing the law and flushing them out of the shadows. That's right. So you got
Good day, sir.
Exactly. And
This does remind me in San Jose in years past, there was a gambling thing that they're trying to bust people, and people were actually walking out, and they're trying to just act.
Don't know anything?
Ignorant.
I don't know anything. What were you doing inside?
Just drinking coffee?
Not gambling?
No. I don't know what this is a coffee shop. There's no gambling. I don't know anything.
I don't know. What happened inside?
I don't know. I don't know nothing.
Don't say
I don't know anything.
Yeah, there's
Gambling. What?
That's terrific. Wow. Well,
Morning.
Anyway, that's Law and Disorder for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
All right, good stuff. That was it. I saw that Sal the Shoemaker story, and I had to share it with our audience. We've been sitting on that, and there's no...
Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy.
There is no... You'll never hear anything about Fat Andy. He went down.
Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy.
Sorry about that, but Sal the Shoemaker and all the rest of them...
Joe Fish, Sal the Shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
They are... they're headed to a place where they won't be able to do any kind of... real high-end gambling for a while. Smash the like button like a boss.
With your iron rod.
Kim's Turbo News, and then Belinda Waymouth with It's the Planet Stupid. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Apparently, former President Trump isn't so happy with the way the whole jury selection thing is going in his criminal hush money trial in New York. There's already 7 jurors appointed to his case, and it's moving faster than some legal experts had predicted. Trump wrote on social media, in his words, "I thought strikes were supposed to be unlimited when we were picking our jury. I was then told we only had 10. Not nearly enough." Trump told reporters that the judge is rushing the trial and doing everything he can for the Democrats, as if the Democrats are involved in this in any way. The jury selection resumes tomorrow.
And there are not nearly enough hot girls on my jury.
The jury is not good looking enough. No.
Yeah.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah.
President Biden is backing...
Feel it in your...
Oh, sorry about that.
Whoa,
my
good
elbow
morning.
hit the...
If I think I'm the most honest human being, perhaps that God ever created.
That's what I wanted.
President Biden is backing Speaker Mike Johnson's plan to provide military aid to Israel, Ukraine, and the Indo-Pacific. The president, shortly after Johnson released his plan, called on the House to pass the package this week. Johnson unveiling text for 3 separate bills, with a 4th expected to be released later today. Now, he says he plans to hold a vote by Saturday. The move sparking backlash from conservative Republicans who want to tie funding for Ukraine to border policy changes. This comes as Johnson faces threats for his removal as Speaker. More than 24 people who protested on the Golden Gate Bridge are being released from jail. The San Francisco district attorney says she has no choice but to let them go, since it'll be several days before she decides whether to charge them. The group was arrested Monday after blocking traffic for hours as part of a coordinated effort across the Bay Area and nationwide over the war in the Middle East. The DA pointed out the suspects could end up working out a plea deal like the Bay Bridge protesters from November. California making it easier for airline passengers to file complaints. The state is partnering with the Department of Transportation. This means the Attorney General's office can investigate reports against airlines, ticket agents, and other companies accused of harmful or deceptive practices here. If the problem isn't solved, it could be reported to the Department of Transportation. The U.S. Transportation Secretary says issues like lost luggage and refunds aren't just inconveniences, they're violations. That program will be in place for at least 2 years. 2 California lawmakers aren't giving up on their fight to clear homeless encampments near schools. A Senate committee rejecting their bill yesterday, agreeing, though, that it could be voted on again before the April 26th deadline. Senate Minority Leader Brian Jones admitting he's not trying to solve the homeless crisis in California, but feels this is a compassionate solution to protect people in sensitive areas. Those would also include open spaces, transit stops as well. The bill aims to ban camping on sidewalks and streets, as well if shelter space is available. California keeping its title of the 5th largest economy in the world. Despite all the homeless people here, we're doing pretty well. It makes 7 years in a row. Governor Gavin Newsom crediting a combination of innovation, higher education, a talented workforce, diverse industries, and unparalleled natural resources, saying all that will help the state continue to do well into the future. San Francisco 49ers, first team to have their own California license plate. The DMV requires 7,500 to be sold to guarantee they go into production next year. That's why some of them are being offered for free. So fans can see if any of those are left by using the code FAITHFUL during checkout. If not, the specialty plates will cost you $50, double to get it personalized. A portion of the proceeds will go toward preserving state parks. The Anaheim City Council approving a nearly $2 billion Disneyland expansion project. The vote came early this morning after a council meeting that started Tuesday night. 84 people spoke about Disneyland's plans during the public comment section of the meeting. The council can officially approve the so-called Disneyland Forward project with a second vote in May. 4 suspects are facing charges on suspicion of stealing lottery scratchers from convenience stores across Southern California. They rush into the 7-Eleven, they scoop up the scratchers, and they run out. Authorities netting 3 adults and 1 minor. They say these folks netted $90,000 in winnings from stolen scratchers tickets, which were taken during 44 different strong-arm robberies in a span of 2 months. The stores that were targeted suffered a total of $250,000 in retail losses. As of yesterday, 3 adult suspects are being held on $100,000 bail. Can't steal the scratchers. This report is sponsored by you, which means we rely on you to support The Mark Thompson Show. Find us at themarkthompsonshow.com, themarkthompsonshow.com. That's where you'll find the Patreon and the PayPal link, so check that out, please. And, of course, the Super Chat, Super Sticker situation open wide here on YouTube. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. Feel it in your soul. The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
100% effective. How about that?
There is no defense for my conduct.
Joe Fish, Sal the Shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Seriously, what the?
Thank you, everybody who joins us. Thank you, everybody who supports us through Patreon or PayPal, or even just jumping on here with the Super Sticker, Super Chat. So appreciate it as a crowd-funded show. It's really cool. We are so happy on Wednesdays. We get to do something which very few other shows do, and that is check in on stories related to the environment, to the planet, to corporate pollution, to the hope of alternative energy, to the realities associated with some of these things. We do it all in a segment we call It's the Planet, Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet.
Earth. A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet Stupid. No. It's the planet Stupid.
Planet Stupid is Belinda Waymouth, eco-journalist. Usually has some good news along with the bad. So, hi, Belinda.
Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I have a little bit of everything today.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm laughing. Just the way you said it. It was funny.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, why don't we start off with the not so great news and then we'll get to the good news? Because I think to end on a high note I think that our audience will like that. And you will too, Mark. It'll put you in a good mood. So come on.
That would be good. That's a heavy lift. So let's go for it.
I'm up for it. I'm up for the challenge.
Okay.
So here's the thing: we've got this terrible coral bleaching event happening right now. You know, we've talked before on the show that global ocean temperatures are out of control. I mean, they're super. You know, they're 1 to 2 degrees Celsius above background levels of back in the 1980s. There's a visual in one of the links that I sent you guys. And then in some parts of the world, they're up 3 degrees Celsius. And that is really, really huge. And it's a huge, it's terrible for corals in particular, because that's how we get coral bleaching. And just to sort of go over, look, the ocean is doing us a massive solid. It's 71% of the ocean. I mean, of the whole planet is the ocean. It's only 29% terrestrial, and it has sucked up 30% of our greenhouse gases, but 90% of the heat. And water has a really high heat capacity, which means it takes a lot to heat it up, which you can imagine because look how big and huge the oceans are and how deep they are. So all this heat is going into them. And then what happens to the corals is the corals have this symbiotic relationship with this lovely little algae called, I love the name, zooxanthellae. And the zooxanthellae live in the corals. They give it its color, and they also metabolize food that the coral then survives on. So what happens is when the coral gets hot, it expels the zooxanthellae, out they go. And right now, 54% of the world's corals are in heat distress and are bleaching, and it's going up by 1% every week. Coral, and marine biologists and coral specialists, they are taking corals out of the water in Florida to try and save them. It's really unbelievable. And we've had 4 major bleaching events since 1980, and the 2 big ones recently have been in the last decade. And the one that's happening now, they think will surpass just in a few weeks, because the last time in 2014, 2017, it was 56% of corals the world over. And, this is just, it's not okay. I mean, I actually just tweeted you a story that I wrote about the coral triangle, quite a while ago, just because most people haven't heard of it. And it's this massive coral triangle around Indonesia and at the northern part of Australia and Malaysia. I mean, 1/10 of the world's reef species, or no, actually more than that, live in this, one, coral area. And they're the juvenile where juvenile fish go to mature a coral reef. So yes, on the left, you see a healthy coral reef. It has its zooxanthellae, it has this beautiful color. And on the right, it's bleached, it's expelled the zooxanthellae. It can survive for a while it's hot without the zooxanthellae, but eventually it will starve. And then you'll get those horrible, the brown, yucky looking coral that has just died, right? When there's a period where, sort of a grace period, I suppose you'd call it. But it's a real wake-up call, and what scientists are so nervous about is, will the La Nina that's taking over from this El Nino? El Nino heats the oceans up, particularly the Pacific, but right now we're seeing the heating in the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, it's everywhere. And, will the La Nina be able to take that heating down? We don't know. And because it has this high heat capacity, it holds on to the heat. You know how the ocean sort of stays at the same temperature? The land has a low heat capacity, so it heats up during the day, and as soon as the sun goes, the earth gets quite cold. But the ocean is very steady. Is help on the way with La Nina? They just don't know.
The effort to rebuild some of these dead coral reefs, the idea somehow that you can grow coral in a more controlled environment and then transplant it. I mean, I've seen some of this. I mean, it can't be done on a grand enough scale, I'm sure, to really make a huge difference. But is there something to that?
Well, yeah. I mean, what they're doing is they're actually relocating corals. They're taking them from the hot equatorial regions and taking them to colder parts of the ocean. But how sustainable is that? And can we really do that when you think how enormous the ocean is, how big these coral reefs are, and how difficult it must be, to move them? I mean, it's a mammoth undertaking.
Sure.
And the problem is, we talk about this a lot, is, it's out of sight, out of mind. We live on the edges of the oceans. There aren't a lot of us who are diving down, with a tank on our backs and looking and seeing what's happening. And when you hear and, talk to these marine biologists who are, trying to save these coral reefs, I mean, they're sort of losing their minds. They've never seen their coral reefs in such distress before. So, there's this sort of psychological toll that's happening to the people, the very people who are trying to save them.
So the news is of concern, and I mean, I even think, I don't know if the word stronger than concern when it comes to the heating of the ocean, because you'll see the coral die and you'll see many species die. If the oceans, and there are already huge parts of the ocean that are inert, right? Dead. I mean, there are big spots where there is no longer any life. Isn't that right? I talked to somebody who's a sea captain who told me that.
Yeah, we have these horrible areas. We do have dead zones. I mean, we have one at the end, with Mississippi River comes out into the, Gulf of Mexico. I mean, all the nutrients that it brings down, all that fertilizer, all the sewage, which is full of nitrogen. So what happens is you get a big algal bloom because it gets all the food. And then when the algae dies, it sucks all the oxygen out of the water as it's decomposing. And then there's no oxygen for the fish, because how do fish and marine species get their oxygen? They get it just by swimming around and drinking the ocean water for the oxygen content. So yes, we've got these dead zones happening. I mean, we also have, this is a thing that's in the article that I tweeted to you today, talking about marine protected areas and how important they are, and that we are getting, more and more of those around the world. But we really have to be curbing our emissions. The ocean is not, the thing about the ocean is when the water gets hot enough, the CO2, it's not, it can't be absorbed by the ocean. The ocean's actually expelling CO2 and oxygen because it's too hot for those gases to be, to better dissolve into it. So it's a real concern, and it's a real wake-up call, because it's also the weather, and it's the thing we were talking before about, the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation current, the one that, goes up the eastern seaboard and, up to, Greenland, and then goes down and, all the way down to Antarctica, and, is taking nutrients and, oxygen and, all these things, and, and also, the thermocline, it's also moving the heat around in the ocean. We don't want those currents to be disrupted because we've made the ocean too hot. And that's the thing that people, marine scientists are also very concerned about. Will we break down those ocean currents that our, I hate to get too dire, Mark, but that our very survival, we need those ocean currents to be working.
Well, yeah, it is true that, the ocean dies, we die. There's no question about it. And it's all just such a delicate balancing act.
Yeah, exactly.
So what else can you tell us that's perhaps more encouraging?
Okay, so here's the stuff that's good. And this is so great. So we were talking last week about the Swiss win that the 2,500 grannies had, where the European Court of Human Rights said, yes, you're absolutely right, Switzerland has not been taking care of you. And just so our listeners know, those women were working for 9 years on their legal case. It took 9 years to get their day in court, and they got justice. But here's a thing that's amazing, is this litigation is happening all over the world. And it's not just governments and fossil fuel companies that are being taken to court. The one that I think is so great is also people are going, hey, we've really had it with these companies greenwashing and telling us that their products are, eco-friendly, have this huge recycled content in them, that they're carbon neutral. And what the courts are finding is that, the plaintiffs are right. Because what's happened is, so we've got these young, savvy consumers who really want friendly products. The sale of eco-friendly products has doubled. And so what's happened is all these corporations are making these ridiculous claims about their brand. That sort of doubled. But the other thing that's doubled are the lawsuits against said brands for doing so. So there was this Danish company that said that their pork was climate friendly. And they got taken to court, and the court said, hey, enough. This is nonsense. This is, baloney, trying to say that your meat is yeah, I'm using a meat pun there, is climate friendly, because it's not. You can't say that, you know, it's climate friendlier than you thought. So that company has stopped saying that. There was an Australian airline that was claiming that their airline travel was carbon neutral. Well, you can't plant enough trees to have carbon neutral, you know, air travel. KLM, the Dutch airline, they now can't say that their flights are sustainable. You know, so you've had all this sort of these bogus claims. And the thing that's so great about this, and when we saw what happened last week, and we had, you know, our 16 young Montanans last year, you know, went against the state of Montana when they said, by not regulating these, you know, mining projects here, you are violating, you know, our, you know, health outcomes. You know, what the people are saying is, you know, we're not going to take it anymore, which, you know, fantastic. And it's having this real effect because, you know, combining that with the science, it's changing the narrative. It's giving civil society agency. It's putting corporations and governments on notice, which is really good. And these, you know, people are winning. And so when so we've got the greenwashing, then we've got, you know, fossil fuels. So there was an NGO in the Netherlands, a Dutch NGO, that took Shell to court in 2015. It was the first case of saying, hey, you're wrecking the planet. You're causing climate change. And Shell was ruled against, and the High Court in the Netherlands said, okay, this government has to reduce its carbon emissions below 1990 levels by 25% by the year 2020. And the thing that's sort of great there is that you have a judiciary that is, you know, not partisan. And so even though a right-wing, you know, a party has taken power in the Netherlands, it cannot overturn this the, you know, governmental policy which was put in place by this lawsuit, because there's a threshold that the government, whoever, you know, whatever party they are, has to reach a certain amount of climate mitigation, you know, every year. And I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we had, you know, non-partisan judges here, and we could rely on them to uphold, you know, these legal laws, because as we can, you know, we're seeing there, you know, they change as the government changes.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the power of the courts to modify and really recast a lot of environmental policy, you know, because these things have been going on for so long. I mean, toxic dumping's been going on for so long, and it's interesting that we do have an agency in this country, it's the EPA, and they do have some muscles to flex. But what's happening now, and I think probably regular listeners to this show are sick of hearing me say it, but I'm telling you, this train is coming down the tracks. They are going to be undermined completely by this Supreme Court, just as you've said. It's a corporate-friendly court, and they are looking for ways to undermine the power of the EPA. And so they are going to undermine that power, both in the way that they regulate toxic dumping and they regulate toxins in the environment, and they're going to go after consumer protections as well. But I love to see what you pointed out, which is that there are other parts of the world where that is not the case, where you are seeing the courts flex their muscles and they're saying, regardless of the party in power, this has to be taken care of. So
it's really fantastic, and of course Shell is, you know, appealing against that decision, but the NGO that was successful, I mean, it just absolutely emboldened them, or not emboldened, I shouldn't say, it just that, you know, when they got that decision, and you know, and justice is on their side, because this is about, you know, their survival, their children's survival, their grandchildren. You know, now they're going after 5 big banking institutions. They're going after all these different corporate multinationals. And, you know, it's really changing the narrative and giving, you know, like I said, civil society is being, you know, empowered by this. And then when those, you know, young, you know, that group of, you know, 16 young Montanans got that, you know, ruling in their favor, the rest, you know, kids in other states sit up and go, oh, hey, well, if they can do that, you know, in Montana, you know, we can do that here. And the thing is that the world has been looking for this sort of transnational movement, and what we're seeing is it's happening in the courts, and it may not always be perfect. Colombia back in 2018, there was a ruling that they had to stop the deforestation of the Amazon, from the Colombian, edge of the Amazon. Well, that was in 2018, and it wasn't until 2022 when they did get a political party in power who believed that saving the Amazon was important, that actually got enacted. So it's not, it's not a perfect thing, and there are, you rule against these companies. I mean, I'll tell you what happens to a fossil fuel. As soon as there's a lawsuit against them, their stock prices go down. And if the plaintiffs are successful, their stock prices go down, stock goes down even more. So, this hits them where it hurts. And what there's a lot of analysis being done of these cases, because what they're finding is globally, not, this is excluding the US ones, that 55% of these cases that are being brought are ending up being positive for the, the climate. And so it's putting governments and corporations on notice. So they are actually being sort of forced to change their policy because they can see, the people are showing their political will in court, I suppose, is what it boils down to.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, that states it so well, because you have to bring the litigation, you must have people to bring it. And that's, by the way, for another time, one of the ways in which these big companies have challenged a lot of these lawsuits is who has agency for whatever grievance you have, an environmental grievance. In other words, who is affected, who is harmed. And so when you bring a case, you have to have agency. And that's one of the things. And of course, the environment doesn't have a voice. And so you need people to bring these cases. And yet the way that they try to undercut the cases to go, well, who are you guys? I mean, you're not people who are affected. You have no agency with this case. But it is the only way, sadly, I think, that you get corporate attention is with the bottom line, as you've said, and those court cases do it because the stock is affected. All right, in our last minute or two, tell me about the crackdown on. Did we do greenwashing yet? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we did that in the beginning.
We did. I'm on so many painkillers I can't even think.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, I can hear you don't sound well.
It's not the pain in my soul. It's I had oral surgery, so that's what's affecting me a little bit. So have we gotten to everything, Belinda?
We kind of have. We've
God, that's extraordinary.
I know.
I don't know what to say.
What? Never been anything like this.
I am really, really impressed. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I am a fast talker, so.
You are. You brought it, and you brought it. Find Belinda Waymouth across social media. And you find her here on Wednesdays. Belinda Waymouth. Waymouth is Waymouth. Love hanging out with you. Thank you for being here. And that's It's the Planet Stupid for today.
My pleasure. See you next week.
More
It's the Planet Stupid. No. It's the Planet Stupid.
next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Albert, how do we do that? How did I actually get everything in with Belinda? It's extraordinary.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah, I was surprised. It took me a while to hit the end too, because I was scrolling through all my pages. I wasn't expecting to be there at that time.
Yeah, we're on time. We got a lot in.
That's
it's
really
outrageous.
Good report as well, when you talk about litigating the environment and how that has the capacity to impact our future.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, it's come down to that, Did I get a hold of Shaylin Thompson? Great last name, first of all. Good for you. She spells it in a cool way. Thomson. I love that.
It's Thompson, not Thompson.
Yeah, I really like it like that.
There's never been anything like this.
All right, it's a big shout out.
Big shout out.
I love a $20 super sticker.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Delwood says, Mark, no major Boeing deaths inside of USA since 2001. Let's stick to the facts instead of the scare stories.
Oh.
Delwood, if a situation is extremely dangerous and getting more dangerous, Do you just go to the bottom line and go, look, nobody's dead yet. Let's all relax. Let's look the other way until somebody dies? No. I mean, I guess I take your point that air travel is basically safe, but you don't find it alarming what these whistleblowers are saying? These are whistleblowers who worked at Boeing, Delwood. They're testifying under oath. Their testimony is so controversial and radioactive to Boeing that they've been threatened in every way, including having their lives threatened. One of them actually did die of suicide.
Allegedly.
So the idea somehow that you could go, Mark, come on, nothing to see here. No major deaths. Let's board the flight already. Yeah. All right. Fine, dude. But I'm just giving it to you straight. This is the news of the day. They are testifying today on Capitol Hill. I think it's a very big deal. I think it's a very big deal that the leading maker of aircrafts in the United States of America is apparently rife with issues related to maintenance and shoddy workmanship, to the point that you have whistleblowers coming forward and testifying before Congress. Delwood, I'd suggest that you recalibrate on this issue. And even though I adore your name, which I'm sure is made up, I will tell you that if it's not made up, send me your driver's license, black out the rest, that actually has your name, Delwood, on it, and I'll send you a piece of our merch. All right? That's my... Delwood is a Boeing executive, says Mars. Anyway, I think it's kind of a big deal. So...
I mean, the door came off, Mark, mid-flight. I mean, like, if someone's, like, yeah, if someone fell out of that airplane, the door literally came off. So
the wheels are falling off.
Albert makes a very good point. The door came off, and they said that had people been sitting in those seats, somebody would have been sucked out. So I'm sorry, Delwood. I think on this one, you, as I say, I'm going to ask you to recalibrate. Because, yeah, Cassandra's got it. Mr. Delwood must love deregulation at the cost of someone else's life. Yeah. I don't mean to gang up on you, but I do mean to say, come on, bud. I mean, this is it. We've got a real serious problem here, and it's kind of whistling in the graveyard kind of thing that you're doing that just ain't cool. So, any other text I have to get to?
The Mark Thompson Show.
I worked there a long time ago. Before it was merged with McDonnell Douglas, and it was an excellent company back then. Yeah, that was a long time ago, I guess. I mean, look, that's the point. They were, top of the game, and now they're not anymore. So, Albert, what more do I have to do? Anything?
I think that's it. I think that we had a great, what a great show. A great Wednesday.
What a great show. My gosh.
How are you feeling, Mark? How's the painkillers kicking in?
I have to be honest, I'm in some pain right now.
Oh, no.
Oh, my gosh.
And what happens is it causes you to salivate and stuff. It's really messed up. I mean, look, again, believe me, it's oral surgery. A lot of people have been through it, and a lot of worse than me. And a lot of people are dealing with things so much worse than what I'm dealing with. But it's just that in this moment, it's really annoying. So I mention it. And so I got to get to some soft food and some... ground up Motrin or however they do it. Oh, gosh.
I'm sure some wine would help too, Mark. You just drink a couple glasses, you won't feel anything.
Yeah, they would, and they made a big thing about no alcohol. And what's the other thing that I love, okay? The other thing I love is coffee. They said no hot beverages. It's like, oh my God, it's been rough. It's been rough.
What?
All right. Kim is next.
Shallow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Kim is doing the after party live. Go join her. We will see you tomorrow with David Katz and the law. We got a lot to talk about. Till then, bye-bye.